Okay, we should be good. Welcome to People Who Teach, a podcast about the habits, beliefs, and ideas of real people who teach. My name is Brian Seppi, and I am thrilled to share this space with my talented colleague, Andrew Stella. Welcome to the episode, episode number 3, Mr. Stella. Here we are.
What's going on, Brian? How you been? I feel like we haven't talked in a while. We missed last week, so
yeah, things are good. I can't complain. We've done some things as a family recently, and I have some sort of parenting wins. It's been a goal of mine is to work on becoming the father that I want to be for the boys, and certainly the partner that I want to be for my wife. And having said that, I think this week was really good because I got both boys out for the first time to try something new. So we, as you know, in this area, we get a ton of snow, last night included, and took the kids out to Kissing Bridge, local ski resort, and got both boys up on snowboards, not with the mindset of like crushing it or anything like that, but with the sort of intent to take on something new and challenging and really understand what does it mean to learn something new and experience some failure. And the boys handled it really well. So we were excited, and we met up with some other people there, and I think the kids had some socialization and some normalcy. And so it was just a big win for me. As like a parent, I just kind of stood back. So then now the next question logically is, do you ski, right? Personally. And the answer is I don't ski. I've never skied. I've never snowboarded. I've never done anything. So the obvious question for my kids is, Dad, if we got out there and we did this work, shouldn't you also be out there learning with us? So the next step at some point coming up soon is me getting out there and either snowboarding or skiing. So I will keep you posted as to my progress.
Just like we talked about it on one of the last podcasts, making mistakes, learning from it, showing kids you're human,
Yeah. How about you? What's your big parenting win?
I had a good one recently, which was great. My daughter asked me to go to Barnes & Noble, and I don't push reading too hard on my kids. When I was in school, I was not a big reader. I did not enjoy reading. And my daughter's teacher got her a Barnes & Noble gift card for Christmas. And on the weekend, she just said, Dad, I want to go get some books, and and I said to her, are you want to go for toys? And because usually when they were younger, that's what they wanted. They wanted to go to the toy section, but she goes, no, I want to get some books. And I was like, I'll always buy you books.
Oh, that's so cool.
And she, we just walked around for like an hour and just browsed and like checked out tons of books. And it was just a great experience because that's one of my favorite things to do. So
yeah, that's so nice that she's finding sort of her own path with that, right? And she's asking you, she's initiating that, which is what every teacher and parent certainly strives for sure. It's funny, as I was listening to you there, and I know this is episode 3, so we've probably got I think on our shared list that we have over 50 ideas for topics, but it just sort of triggered another idea for a topic, which is really showing the real examples of teachers. Where are you showing up where maybe you're in the learning zone too, or you're not taking on something that is so polished? And I know we hinted to those things, but really taking that on as a full-blown episode, because I think you're right. Like, sharing that story that you just shared there, which is because I was in the same boat. It's so weird, their backgrounds. Now, I was not as an elite wrestler, but I certainly wrestled for a very long time. But I had this sort of other part of me that wanted to be super well educated and well read, but I just resisted reading at all points. Even through high school, like it was tough. It was a tough go. And I think unpacking those things and letting kids know that like it happens, but there are ways through it now. And I think we're better equipped as teachers right now to know that it's important to find or help kids find their way with reading, right? Like Yeah. And you certainly experienced that at grade 3 for sure.
Well, yeah, and I also think that it's good. What I'm trying to do right now is kind of flip the script on what we've normally done, the norms of teaching.
Mm,
And, we're just finishing a fantastic book right now. And we've just been enjoying the book. And I'm telling them about the 6 other books that I want to read with them. And I'm trying to get a book I want my kids leaving this year, not remembering being at home, learning online, COVID. I want them to remember, man, Mr. Stoller read me that book.
mm.
I'll never forget that book.
That I you know that is so important that you say that.
Yeah.
Um, and I honestly have rocked up to many parent teacher conferences and said that exact same thing. And I'm so glad that you're living that out, because that's the place where I want my kids to be. I said, honestly, I've rocked up to these parent teacher conferences and I've said, as an educator, the grades, I really am not going to put a lot of stock into that. I understand that is a sort of long-standing system that we have, and I get it. And I'm not going to try and dismantle that in one parent teacher conference. But what I do want my kids coming home with is being stoked about a book or being jacked up about an author. And I think that's exactly what you're describing there, which is like, we've got this long plan after this, and the kids are probably anticipating that plan too.
Yeah. And I mean, this is our topic today is, how are you dealing with mid-year, right? So, you know, Brian and I kind of came into this like thinking of these different topics, and typically this is a tough time for teachers. And I'm going to tell you, as we move into like some tips and ideas for teachers on, how to get through this tough time, which it is every year. This is my 8th year of teaching. It's always just a tough month because you're coming back from the first long break and all sorts of things, and your expectations get higher. State testing might be around the corner. Who knows? There's just lots of things that are happening in the month of January, and I think a lot of teachers feel it and they don't quite know why.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, and I was saying earlier to my wife that, I'm having a great week this week, but last week was not a great week for me. And it's just kind of this rock and roller coaster. And now we're on this COVID roller coaster, which is, who knows? It's just it's a different time. But honestly, if I was in the classroom and things might be normal, January still might be a tough month. So, but going back to our topic, like, I think we're here to kind of provide some tips, some ideas, some things. And that's actually my first tip is make learning meaningful to the kids, right? Like read a book and keep the kids on the edge of their seat. And I'm with another teacher and we're reading the same text right now. And we're on the last chapter, and the kids are literally trying to Google the ending because somebody told them that it was a sad ending, and they gotta know. And they don't have the book right in front of them. Like, we put it on a doc cam.
Sure.
And we're doing it as a read aloud, and it's just making that connection. And also, this is just a side note, I've never read this book before, so I'm experiencing
love that
every word with them. And not only are they never going to forget this book and this year and this classroom, but I'm not going to forget them because of the book and the experience we shared together as well. So
that's so powerful. And you bring it up, our topic for tonight, which is, how are you getting through the middle of the year, this slippery slope that is January into February for some of our northern territories. And I know the end of the school year comes much earlier for some of our southern states. But when we think of mid-year and we think of that first tip that you shared, which is finding the joy of experiencing something with your students, like a read aloud or a book. And I love your approach, which is, I'm going to try and read this thing cold with them. It's not how I lead many of my PDs when I work with colleagues for preparing interactive read aloud. But I can certainly understand the joy that you're experiencing side by side, because it truly is that shared experience, because you're probably hanging on to the edge of your seat just as much as they are.
Mhm.
So that's really great.
And things that I'm processing as well. When sometimes I feel like when we plan too much and we do those things. Now I had a whole plan for this book. I had, teachers pay teachers things and jam boards, and
Sure.
Mr. Brian Seppi got me the Jot Lot, which I absolutely loved, and I used it. And guess what? We used it once on a prediction, because
Yeah.
then when we got into the book, I was just like, oh, this is too good,
Yeah.
too good of a
That's so
book
good.
to have you weighed down with like,
Hmm.
I want to talk about it.
Yeah.
I want you to draw. I want what's going on in your head. And we took a much more creative approach, and that it's something I wrote down with making learning meaningful. Like, it's okay to deviate from the plan, as long as you're doing what's right for kids and for learning. So
Yeah. So the first point that we made tonight, which is your point, is what? Make learning meaningful.
make it meaningful to
Love
you
that.
and to kids, not just and this goes for PDs, everything you're doing, like, make it meaningful.
Yeah, that ties in nicely with my first point. And again, so this would be point number 2 overall. As an educator and an instructional coach who works with adults, I recognized very quickly in January that it's time to kind of take a pulse check and get early career teachers and the teachers that I work with in PLCs to really get them um, reflecting a little bit. Okay. Now, this is always tricky when you do PD, because people are like, just give me what I got to, get through, and give me the PD, give me the content, whatever. But I really wanted them to take stock of where they are. So here's how I did this one. And this comes out of the great work of Growth Coaching International, which is a group that I work with out of Australia, and a coaching group, and they are fantastic. And I floated this idea to our instructional coaching group, and we tried this last Thursday in a PD. Now, you could do this on your own, but I don't know that it has the same effect. And I can unpack the reason why. So I'm going to share my screen,
Mhm.
and I will show you how this positive strengths based, because this is my point. My point is, if you can take stock at this time of year and take a strengths based approach to you, what are your strengths? Then you can harness those strengths and really be good for kids. Okay. Kids and families. So taking stock of your strengths. And here's how we did this one. There are many ways to do this strengths based approach. We took, I'm going to share this screen. We took a little slideshow that we created. Okay. All right. So on this slideshow, we had a slide. The first slide is this disillusionment slide here. You can tell that we are trying to do many things at one time here, which is part of the issue. But let's see if we can get this right here. We'll get the technology right. All right.
You got to say, let me just share my
I
screen.
Yes, that seems like very good etiquette and has become such a commonplace thing. All right, so here's how this goes. Hopefully, you can see slide number 1. Correct.
Yes.
So we did this in breakout rooms. We were going to do breakout rooms, and this is going to be 5 minutes per person in the breakout room, 10 minutes total. Okay, and you could probably do this with many groups. And I did show the phases of first year teaching, because what many people have said to me is, look, these phases of first year teaching are not just exclusive to first year teachers or early career teachers. They are, in fact, something I feel like I'm living. And this stage right now of mid-year, January, February, is that stage of disillusionment. It feels like things are starting to unravel a bit. It feels like things perhaps are falling apart somewhat. So the way that we did this is to reflect back on our strengths from the year. Slide number 3 goes like this. So one partner is going to be the listener and the asking the questions, right? You're going to be, partner A is going to be asking the questions and just listening. They're not adding anything. And here's what they do. They first ask, what is something that you've been really pleased about with your teaching this year? Okay. They ask that question, get them thinking. Then they ask them, what made it go so well? And the only responses they can ask from here are, what else? And what else? That's the only stems they can use. The job of the listener or the person asking the questions here is to write down, and we preface this, to write down the strengths that they hear coming from their partner and the example that they're sharing. And the only thing they're doing is taking down notes and keywords about their strengths.
Yeah, I was going to say keywords like that
Yeah.
would be a big thing.
And at the end, they affirm their partner's strengths by telling them the qualities that they heard. So here's what we heard from ours. The person I was with said, "You're innovative, you were brave, you took a chance, you were acting with good communication, you're a good communicator, you were creative." So based on the time that I shared, these are the things that came up for me. Okay. And all they say is, from what I heard you say, a strength or strengths that you have are, and they name them out. And the only thing the partner does, because this is where teachers are really bad, they're really bad at taking compliments, right? Like, you know it, I know it. We are really bad at taking compliments. Maybe not all of us, but some of us are really bad at it. And we've got to get better at that. Because if you can describe a time when you were at your best in your teaching this year, and somebody else can listen to it objectively and give you feedback on that thing and let you know your strengths, the only thing you need to do is just say thank you. Now, we had a couple teachers, my partner included, who took the strengths that I listed for her. She took those strengths, she put them on an index card. I said, what are you going to do with that? She put them right next to her on her laptop as a key reminder for who she is and who she wants to become and who she wants to continue to be for her kids. And I thought that was such a cool little thing. So I was like, all right, that's one simple way. Let me legitimately 10 minutes of time with a partner and doing this work. The other way that you can do this with a strengths-based approach, if you don't have the time to do this protocol that I listed, and we'll link this in the show notes. I'll link this protocol or I'll put it on maybe TikTok or on my beacons, and people can have at it if they want to run this for PD or whatever. But the other way you can do this is just go to a person that you trust and just ask them the same exact question. Can you describe a time when I was at my best? And let them describe the time. And because you're detached from it, you're not telling the story. You're able to listen wholeheartedly and identify the strengths in that story as if it were somebody else. So, it's a simple way. And you could do this with the same thing with weaknesses too. If you wanted to really find out your weaknesses, can you tell me a time that I wasn't at my best? What did you notice? Right? What would have made it better? Right? Like those sorts of deep questions. So there you go. Taking a strengths-based approach, I think at this time of year and taking stock of your strengths can really help you get through the remainder of the year. All right, we're back to you. What's point number 2 on your end? We have so far we have making learning meaningful, and we have taking a strengths-based approach to your own attributes.
Just to piggyback on it for a second, I mean, we've talked about this on our past podcasts, that you need to focus on the strengths, the good, what's going right, and a lot as teachers, sometimes we focus on the negative or what needs to happen next. And again, it might be our expectations are high, or there's never enough time in the day, and you feel whatever you're feeling. I mean, there's a million different feelings as a teacher, but that's so interesting. And I like how you said, what do you notice too, right? It's all that's high level thinking. And that's what I try to teach kids too. What do you notice? Just talk about it. What do you notice?
So important.
Yeah. Okay. So my number 2, I went all out of order with my tips and ideas, but I got number 2. I'm going with number 2. Was going to be number 2 because I'm going to end with my number 1. It's going to be my last one. But number 2 is make kids feel special. The way that you speak with them, the way that you talk, the things that you do, and especially in remote, if you're teaching remote, if you're teaching a hybrid, the tone in which you use and how you really treat kids. There's two examples that I'll give you that we just did. So one was last week, our school, I'm on a leadership committee within our school. And something we started doing as remote teachers was I started doing, and I did this last year when I started teaching third grade. I started doing some shout outs, and I would do them every once in a while. And I'd be like, give this person a shout out. I'd put their name up on the board and, their picture. And I would say, this kid's been rocking this. And then
Mm.
all this. So my remote kids were doing so good this year. And I started that again with them. And I was like, you know what? All of you are doing an amazing job. And I
Mm.
boom, 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 right down the line in a grid view and said, you've done this, you've done that, and the smiles
Yeah.
on their faces could light up a room. They felt validated.
Mm.
They felt like their effort, like somebody was noticing them, right? Somebody noticed them.
Hmm.
They and it built relationships instantly. Like it took our relationship to a next level. And I continue to do that. So, I'm on this leadership committee and we were trying to figure out, man, these kids have been through a lot. Like, what can we do to make them essentially feel special?
Mm.
So we came up with this idea and we did an entire school virtual Zoom leadership day.
Wow.
It was fantastic, and the teachers did an amazing job, and every teacher had their own little spin on it. Like some had students giving shout outs, some were tying it into different habits that we were working on in class and tying it to like mission statements. And it was really, really powerful. And every single student left that assembly knowing, and in the past, we used to do like one leader from one class.
Mm.
I always used to remember, and I think this is where it triggered for me at one point,
Mm.
my 8th year of teaching, believe it or not, that I was always that kid that didn't get picked.
Yeah. Mm.
And I was never a leader, but at some point I had a mentor or someone, or maybe it was even myself. I don't know when the moment was that I became a leader, and I just stepped up, but maybe I'd have to think about that one. But I never got that, and
Hmm.
that hurt, So
Hmm.
all those kids left that leadership assembly feeling proud.
Yeah. That's so important. And, one of the big things that I think I hear you saying there is that every child needs to be seen every day. And I think we say that. I think, we say, of course I see all of my kids every day. Right. In the most literal sense, of course, but are you able to tap into stopping what it is you're doing and look them in the eyes and call them by name and ask them questions and really just be genuinely curious, not like in a hurry to get to the next thing or, and there are those times too. Like, look, we're not perfect. We're not, you get rushed. There's a million and one decisions to make before 9:07. And, it's challenging, but the idea that it's every kid by name with a smile every single day, right? That's so simple to do. So yeah, I love your calling them out and making sure that they're noticed for working hard. And it is very possible that, like you said, like at this point, every one of the members of this class has been just so resilient that everyone deserves to be noticed as a community. I love that. Yeah.
Well, and that's why I think, and we could talk more about this in maybe another podcast, but that's why restorative justice circles are so powerful. The morning meeting is so powerful because sometimes we get caught up in, you're right, we got to get to math. We got to get this going.
Sure.
And the transitions, teaching remote, I have finally realized how much time is spent on transitions. And when you're on Zoom and the kids are muted and they're just locked into you, you can do a lot because there's no, we got to
Yeah.
get up, we got to go to lunch, we got to do this, we got to do that. So I just think, those things are so powerful. Morning meeting, restorative justice circles, these are all things that I've done throughout my career that have led me to this point. And the last thing I'll say about making kids feel special is just, maybe drop in and just those kids that might be having the most trouble, just saying like, I trust you. I
Mm,
trust you're gonna make the right choice. I trust that you're gonna do the right thing. And especially if you're like remote or hybrid, like you don't know, you're putting all your faith into them. And are they gonna let you down? Maybe,
mm,
maybe.
mm.
But the moment that you tell them like the moment you have the attitude like he's not going to do it or she's not going to do it, you just lost faith in them
Yeah.
that they needed, and you were the only one who could give it to them.
Right. And that goes back to that mindset piece, right? Which is like, if you want to look for that thing, you will find it.
Yeah.
And right, like it's that sort of cognitive bias that if you wake up with that mindset that things are just going to go awry, then your whole day is going to be shot. I can guarantee it. So
Mhm.
yeah, that's a great point.
All right, so that means I got two, you only got one,
I
so
got one. Yeah. So so far on the list, we have make learning meaningful, get them to buy in, right? And then we talk about taking stock of ourselves, which was my point, which is having a strength-based reflection and approach to your day. And then you made the point of making students feel special in all the great ways that you did that. So, all right, my point number 3, this is again about you taking care of you. If you don't take care of yourself, right, there is no way you can show up and be good for people. Now, I know that is easier said than done, but I think there are small steps that you can take. And I'm going to lay it on you one way that I do it. This is just me. This may not be anybody's approach, but this is just my approach. So my point number 2 is play offense, not defense. I wake up every morning and I try to do a few little things that set me on the right path. Okay. And what I'm going to suggest that I do for myself and just explain it is not something that'll work for everybody. But think about it. Think about your own start to your day, playing offense or defense. One way to do this is to wake up, grab your phone, check out Twitter, check your email, react to 15 different things that have happened. That's defense. Go downstairs. You're reacting to the dishes that are in the sink. You're reacting to the clutter on the counter. We all have it. And those things have to get done. There are things that have to get done, but there's a way to also play offense.
Mhm.
Okay. And the way that you play offense is this. For me, I wake up, I don't touch my phone. I don't touch my phone in that first, probably about an hour. So 5:15 wake, 6:15, maybe I grab my phone at that point. But here's what I do. I've got myself into a habit. I really had to take stock of my habits, thanks to James Clear and others. I wake up in the morning, I put my feet on the ground, and that is the cue for me to smile. It is sometimes a forced smile, I'm not going to lie. Other times it is a really grateful smile, like I am happy to be here. It sounds cheesy. It sounds out of the norm, but I could tell you this, the minute I make that decision to hit the floor and smile, I'm in control.
Mhm.
I'm in control of my thoughts, I'm in control of my emotions, and I start my day that way. The next thing I do, because others are still sleeping. And so I don't have the chance to make my bed, but I'll get to that in a minute. I go downstairs. Um, I hydrate. I drink an entire 16 ounces of water in one shot, and I'm in control of that water, right? Like I fill it up, I take it, I'm in control. I'm playing offense. The next thing I do, depending on whether or not if I'm fasting or not fasting that day, is I think about what am I going to eat and what choice am I going to make about the food that I'm about to eat. Then I grab my coffee because everybody that I know needs some coffee. I like to nurse my coffee throughout the entire day, so till about 11 o'clock. But I get my coffee in after that, which is probably a little counter to that hydration, but whatever. Then I do a quick write. Okay, my quick writes, and I could probably just show this to the screen. My quick writes are like one pagers. They're not. These are not deep writes, and it basically consists of gratitude. What's going to make today great? What's a quote that I'm focused on? Could be a quote that I come up with, could be something else, or what's an affirmation or something I'm thinking of. And then what are some things, like 3 things that have my attention for the day? And I just jot those things out, right? And I do a little evening one too. And I know you talked about journaling recently too.
Mhm.
So I do that. That's 1 page. Boom, done. And then I read a little bit. Now, lately, I've gotten lucky with this one where I read a little bit from the Daily Stoic, and these are short. These are really, really short, 1 page, and even like a sort of a third of a page. And each day has its own designation and sort of a quote from the Stoics and a little unpacking of that. So I read a little bit, but that read is quick, right? So I'm still playing offense. Made a choice to write, made a choice to read. Then I go upstairs and I do push-ups. Again, I do something physical. I'm in control. I'm making a choice and I stretch. I notoriously I've got really bad hamstrings, really bad sort of outer IT band issues. And so I've got a lot of strengthening that needs to occur. So stretching is really important. But what it does is it puts me in control. Now, all of that takes, that first hour. And then I could check my phone and really check in. Sometimes I post something that I'm thinking about or has my attention from the morning, right? And there are days that I don't get to all of this, but most days I get to everything within reason. And so like there may be 1 or 2 things, like not every day has a right. Right. Like there may be some days that I'm just like, I'm not writing that day, or very seldom do I skip the reading because that feels pretty easy. And it's right there. I leave everything right in the kitchen, which can be annoying and also a blessing too. But I need to bolster those habits. So that's it. And what that does for me, and then I make the bed, or my wife, depending on who's making the bed that day, one of us make the bed. All of those things lead us to having a sort of progress principle, like that idea of following something that gets you on the path for the day. Now, I still have to react to things. You have to react to things, but ultimately, I get in there and I am on a path to make decisions about who I want to be for the day and how I'm going to show up. I've already done like 4 or 5 things that are really meaningful. And I've done those all before I even head out the door. So whatever's next, I'm ready for. I hadn't just reacted. I didn't react to that email. I didn't react to the news. I'm just sort of a little bit more clear at that point. So there you go. Play offense, not defense at this time of year.
I
Make
love
some
it.
small changes. There you go. So, all right. What do you think? Point number, we're at point number 5 now in this podcast.
Oh yeah. Point
What do you,
number 5.
what do you got?
This is actually my last one.
Okay.
So my last tip for right now for teachers is really have a clear reason on your why.
Hmm.
It's very important to have a mission statement or something you reflect on, just like you were talking about journaling, a quote, something that
Yeah.
motivates you. I think about that teacher who put that Post-it note on
Yeah.
her laptop, like those kinds of
Mm.
things. Like, what is your why, and why are you doing what you're doing? I have a few. I
Mm-hmm.
have a few whys. I have a few, and it's tough because some of mine are there's so much trauma
Mm.
inside them
Mm.
that has affected me, that motivates me to want to be a better teacher, a
Hmm.
better father. Um, I can share one story that really this is probably the root of me teaching. So
Hmm.
um, I started out, and that on the first podcast I had started out as I started as a substitute, and then we had our second child, and I needed some income, and I started out in pre-K,
Yeah.
and I took over for a classroom, and there was a student in there that had a lot going on, a lot of behavior issues, things like that. Um, and he was very difficult for a lot of different teachers. And the way that they talked about him was, I didn't quite understand. And when I got into the room, he's 4 years old. He was challenging, sure. He pushed back, and somehow during this year, me and him connected. We got a relationship. We figured out what worked, what didn't work. We bonded. We we really just we figured each other out without even knowing it. And all those things just kind of went away.
Hmm.
And he wanted somebody to kind of be there and accountable and be like have some structures in place and things like that. And
Mhm.
that's all he really needed. And we built a really good relationship. And then I left in March, and I actually took over for a class in Westminster, and I had to leave the class. Now
Oh.
he's in pre-K 4, so he's going to go into kindergarten the next year. We had summer, we were ready to go. I was going to do, and I had built such a strong relationship with him. We talked about doing playing basketball and stuff, and like hanging out on the weekends and things like that once school had
Mm.
kind of blown over. So it was like the first week of summer, and I had gotten a phone call that he passed away.
Oh.
Yeah. And it was really, really difficult to hear. It was just, it was really bad.
Hmm.
And lots of emotions. I broke down. I was actually out golfing. It was the first thing I did that summer. So I'm getting ready to like get with him, right?
Mm.
And so I can't even process how much that experience like affected me and like
Mhm.
taught me and like, but all I do know is that number one, I keep a picture of him
Mm.
next to all my classes. He's got a picture with all my classes. He's got his own special picture, and I keep that. And I don't really keep a mission statement or anything,
Mhm.
but he's there with all my other classes lined up, and I have a picture from every year, and that is my why. When I
Hmm.
look at those, and I have my kids' pictures there with them, and um, he helped me so much to become the person I am today.
Well, I can tell you this. And obviously not knowing this child, but I can guarantee you that child is proud of who you've become as a result of that relationship and how you've carried on for so many kids thereafter.
Mhm.
That's clear. You have done remarkable things, and yeah, for you to share that story and something so deeply personal, and I mean that takes a lot of courage to do that. One, but then two, to have that as the sort of wind behind your back and that's driving you forward and making you the educator you've been for so long for the next generation or the next class, or to have that impact on all kids,
Mhm.
is super inspiring to hear that story. And more people need to hear that story for sure.
Well, and I think you and maybe only two other people actually know that story, besides people who have known him. And I think for a long time I didn't tell people
Yeah,
just because
understandable.
and this is a long time ago that this happened, but um, I think if he were here, and always keep track of what age he would be,
Hmm.
and just knowing that every kid that comes my way, I want to treat them like I treated him. I want to build
Hmm.
relationships like I did with him. I want to have a positive impact in their life because life is so short.
Yeah.
And um, you know, every kid deserves to be just treated back to the number two, treated special, and just
Yeah, dude, and you're living that out, man. Like you are that's who you are at the core, right? And I think to have had that experience and to know that that's the foundation for how you treat everybody
Mhm,
is a testament to that child. It's a testament to the belief you had in him, the belief he had in you, and the relationship formed as a result. And it's possible for every kid. Like you said, every child deserves a hero.
yeah, no doubt.
Man, that's a powerful piece right there, man.
Yeah.
I give you a lot of credit for being able to persevere through that experience. And again, like you said, like it's still with you. It's not like it's
Yeah.
not going anywhere, right? But it's the driving force, and it's a force for good for sure right now. So yeah, that's a tough one to come out of. To move on to the next piece, because but I think it's getting clear on your why. So I mean, like, that really helps you get clear on that why, which is the experience you have or the impact that you've had on some, knowing that it can be duplicated and replicated in ways for others, and really just, because what you described in that experience is a belief in another person, a belief in another human being, and the relationship formed about having a positive intent,
Mm-hmm.
right? And assuming that child still had, or that person, because like we got to make this a little bit bigger in the sense that it's really about people.
Yeah.
And that person also had a belief in you, and he assumed positive intent and vibes from you. And when you operate in that world, man, like, nothing's off limits.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's just like you said, vibes, right? We are like very intuitive people. And I feel like teachers who are more intuitive are very, very successful because they can feel the vibes, they can feel the intuition
Mhm.
from others. And kids, I think, have a huge, strong intuition, right? So, and it has to be authentic. It has to
Yeah.
be it has to be real. And if
Yeah.
it's not, kids will probably sniff it out before anybody.
Yeah. And that goes back to my Adam. Adam just wrote in a comment here on the live stream, and his point was it's got to be authentic, because kids can tell when you're just saying stuff, right? Like they can tell when you're not being your true self. They can tell when you are. And look, I still need you to be an educator. I don't need you to be so authentic that you're like, you know what, like today I just don't feel like working. And guys, I need everybody to put their head down, and I'm going to turn off the lights. Like it doesn't work that way, right? Like it can't be that authentic. You still got to show up and do the work and the job and the work ahead for kids, but being authentic in the sense of relationships and letting kids know that you see them, you care about them, you want to hear their stories, you're curious about how they operate, how they learn best, like all of that stuff, that relationship building stuff. Like kids know when you, like you said, kids know when you're sort of not being true about those things, or you're really not listening.
Yeah.
And that's why I always encourage people. I'm like, look, the one thing that I've learned from all of my coaching experiences is, and I'm not saying that I have this mastered, but is working on my listening. And there are ways to work on yourself as a listener, and so that you can show up for people. And I would encourage all people in education to really work on listening, because yeah, get down to their level. Don't try and be in two conversations. Really give them their undivided attention. And yes, some kids are going to be like my own kids. You give my kids that kind of attention, they might try and suck your time. My own children. But the point is, like you said, to make sure that you see them, that you're being authentic with them, and that you value the relationship. That's the key right there. So really well put. All right. So we're on to our sixth point. Should we recap now, or should we recap in a minute? We'll recap in a minute.
Yeah, we'll recap because then we'll go in.
All right. It's like, do I really need another pen, because I dropped one in the live stream here. So now I'm going into the jar of the same Flair pens. All right.
Teachers always have enough pens.
Got enough. Yeah, you don't want to see what is over here. All right, I'm gonna reveal this. I don't know who's watching, but here's the stock of Sharpies and pens that live in a household of educators. And so there it is. All right, here we go. Point number 6, when it comes to making sure that you are persevering through the middle of the year, January into February, or the halfway mark of your year. Point number 6 is this: something you can all do in your classroom, and I'm going to make it about as basic as I can make it, in the sense that I think everybody should try this. Maybe you should. You know what? This will be our opening for our next podcast. You should try this week, okay? And take it on.
Gonna do it.
Yeah. All right. Here we go. I ran this as a course with educators last year, and it was the day before we went out for COVID in March was the last class. It was supposed to be the last class. And we were supposed to share our projects that we created. And unfortunately, that got disrupted. So here we go. But you can do this on your own. It's an inquiry, action, research. It's like a little mini inquiry. Okay. And here's how I would go with a structure. This is what I would recommend, and other people have recommended this. Okay. Come up with a list of questions. Okay, about your students, about learning, about your curriculum, about something you want your kids to be able to do. Okay, here's the big tip for this. When you write your questions out, write them and just brainstorm the entire list, but write them only with what and how to start. Okay, don't get into whys. Whys will never lead you down a good path, and why is mostly accusatory. All right, but here we go. So you start with these what's and how's. An example of that would be something like, how can I increase engagement through play? Right? Like something like that in the classroom. And all you're going to do, or how can I increase engagement in a virtual setting?
Mm-hmm.
Great question. Okay. Once you have your question listed, you're going to create a plan to study this thing. Okay. Now that plan is going to be about as basic as you can make it, in the sense that I'm just going to commit to trying 3 new things this week that could bolster the responses to my question. How can I increase engagement in a virtual setting? I'm going to try 3 things, and I'm just going to watch them as a curious observer. So this is that's step number 2, is create the plan. Okay. Step number 3 is to try these approaches in class. Commit to 2 or 3 approaches, something you're going to change, try them out. Then you have to commit to doing the research. So as these things are happening, you're watching. You're watching with a careful eye. You're kind of observing, like, is engagement increasing? Are they doing something different? Is there a little bit of a different vibe with this new structure that I put in place? And then you're going to collect some data, right? Like you're going to collect like soft data. Like, I noticed that better than 75% of my kids were writing in the comments, or better than 100% of my students were, whatever the way you're trying to increase engagement, they were sketching in their notebook, they were silent, they were engaged, they were asking questions, whatever your data you're collecting. Then just adjust your instruction, right? Just adjust the one thing to say, like, all right, if this implementation that I put in place to increase engagement in a virtual setting, technology, a new way for them to communicate using docs, using slides, using Jamboard, whatever the thing is, does it have an impact on engagement? Right? Now you can check for that. You can ask them the question, right? Like a little exit survey.
Mm-hmm.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how engaged were you in today's lesson? Right? Like you can collect that kind of data. And that doesn't take you much other than just having kids drop a number in the chat, or maybe you have it on a form or whatever. And then you adjust for that. You say, like, all right, if that works, if better than, half of my class were engaged in that activity, what do I need to try next to get the other half engaged? Or if I had 100%, how do I do more of that thing? And that's what I mean about the adjustment. So yeah, there you have it. A little mini inquiry. Simple.
It's genius.
Wow. A lot of other people have written about it before me, but I am glad to bring it to you. And I think you're right. Yeah, it's a cool, I ran it as a full course last year. So I had about 14 educators who were in the course, I think, or 10, maybe 10. And we did it in parts. And I tried to leverage partnerships to help them generate their questions, help each partner generate their plan. And then you had an accountability partner who could help you. So the one colleague that was doing the how do I increase engagement through play, we just captured some straight up, as our data, we captured some straight up video with a phone. I walked in there, we watched the kids at play, and we're like, all right, on a scale of like 1 to 10, how engaged do we think kids were during that time, right? Like, were they more engaged through the play? And then it led us down a path of like, how do we incorporate storytelling through play, right? Like that was our next question. So we adjusted the question as a result of this research that we were doing. And all the research was basic.
Can you give me, okay, so I have 2 questions.
Yeah, 100%.
One, can you give me like a list? I'm like a list guy. Like, give me a few like examples of like some things that you guys had come up with. So the play
Okay.
one.
Yeah. So how do I increase engagement through play? That was Steve's question, right? I thought that was great. And he collected data for that using his phone. The other question was, how do I get more participation in math class?
Mhm.
Right? Like that was a thing. So it came down to doing things like number routines where there weren't direct answers, and it was more of like those. I think they call them, like we call them grand conversations in literacy. I think the math folks call them like a congress. They hold like a congress in math sometimes, where they have this sort of whole group discussion.
Mhm.
And so that was one question: how do we increase engagement and participation in math? The literacy guy does know some stuff about math too. But we had another one who was, how do I increase talk? How do I increase the same question basically in math, same question in literacy, which is in a fifth grade classroom? How do I increase levels of talk, and how do I get to deeper level thinking around that talk? And the way that we did that was really setting up some weekly grand conversations, and we research kids who participates. How do we encourage more participation? How do we get kids showing up to grand conversations with something prepared so that they feel confident to do this work? So it was a really cool little research study. And what people really liked about it was all of the learning was in their hands. It was happening live and in their classroom. They were in charge of the inquiry, so they could adjust it, they could change it. They led to new questions. They were collecting like cool data, like like, all right, there's like collecting data, right? But then there's like the collecting data that's like that I come up with at like 9 o'clock in the morning, right? Or before kids get there. I'm like, all right, I'm just going to kind of give them this survey. It's going to be a scaling question, and I'm just going to see where it goes. And I'm just going to put it up on the board, right? Or, I'm going to have them, talk about that experience, or have them film their conversations today, like whatever the thing was. So yeah, it was really laid back.
See, because this leads me to, so I'm with my team right now, and we're running a PLC, right?
Yeah,
And we're running a PLC together, and a lot of it is very, very basic to me, like word study, or
sure.
you know what I mean? Like we're I'm trying to think a little bit bigger. Like,
Love
what
it.
do we really do to make an impact right now in this moment? And this is like, th-
Yeah.
this is it, you know?
Yeah.
And I'm even thinking right off the top of my head, like in remote learning, how can we get kids talking
Hmm.
more, right? Like, let's brainstorm some ideas, let's plan, and like,
That's it.
let's figure out how we can do this, because kids are muted a lot and they're not getting to talk
Hmm.
as much as they probably would in the classroom. So how do we fix that?
Yeah, and that's an easy thing to measure and collect data for. Like, right, like,
Mhm.
you could record one of your Zooms, watch it back, record a 45-minute clip, watch it back, and get the baseline for how much talk or how much participation you have based on who talks during that time, and then try something new, like a new little strategy, or like, and I suggest, like, don't take on something that's so heavy of a lift.
Mhm.
Like, take on a small lift here, right? Like, go in there and start pushing around logical dumbbells in your workload. Like, don't go in there and looking to, you know, squat the rack here. Okay. But I think it's important that you take on a small bite of this, because then you can check it. You can say, all right, if we put this in place, increase talk through blank, what's the change? What's the reality now? Let's collect that. But then what's the change? And then you come back as that PLC, and you unpack that. Hey, I tried, whatever, getting them to write before they talk, or getting them to drop something in the chat, or everybody was unmuted, and we had some norms for that. Whatever your thing is, yeah, just, and then, like you said, like, tap into that room of, like, the smartest people in that room are the room, right? Like, it's all of you together, that collective knowledge. So that's really cool.
No
Good.
doubt. I love it. All right. So what were our 6 things that we came up with?
All right, 6 things were: make learning meaningful. That was number one. Number two was to take a strengths based approach to you and your reflection of yourself. Number three was to make students feel special, make sure that they are seen. Number 4 was play offense, not defense. Starts early in the morning for that one. Number 5 was to get clear on your why. And number 6 was to take on a mini inquiry or action research question in your teaching.
I mean, that's some amazing stuff.
That's pretty cool, dude.
I feel like, and as we kind of wrap it up, just for everyone out there, we love to hear from you. We love hearing, everything you come to us with on social media. We have literally a list of topics. I came up with 2 of them while Brian and I were talking, but I think, Brian and I are learning so much just from each other that just these conversations each week, I become a better teacher just talking with Brian, and I hope I'm helping Brian too.
100%.
And we go back to our schools, and we're helping our community. We're making our kids better learners, better human beings. And we love having all of you here. If you're listening, and we'd love to hear from you, because just this vibe that Brian and I got going on right now is it's really good, and we'd love to hear from you guys. So Brian, if you don't have anything else, I think we'll wrap it up.
That's it, man. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for listening, and we really appreciate it. Reach out to us on our handles, and we'll talk to you guys soon.
Thank you.